You have what it takes to do it, believing that you deserve a fair wage, that you deserve, paid time off, that you deserve being able to spend the evenings with your kids.
Thank you for joining me today on Commit Your Code. I am Danny Thompson, and I'm joined today with Christina Roberts, who is a software developer and a tech evangelist for Women Who Code. Thank you for joining me today, Christina. I genuinely appreciate having you here with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
To be honest, I don't look forward to a lot of guests. No, I'm kidding. I look forward to all of them. But this one in particular, I was really looking forward to because we're connected on LinkedIn and we've been around the similar circles, but we never really talked one-on-one. So this is a great way to finally do that. But your story is kind of interesting to me because you've jumped around to different areas, but you found your home in tech and you're really making sure that you try to bring others into it. So I really want to dive in and let's just start at the beginning. What did you do before tech?
So I worked in the medical field, a couple of different positions. I was a phlebotomist. I was a nursing assistant. I worked on trauma teams in real emergencies. So that was very different than what I do now, but there's a lot of commonality.
Obviously, something sparked the idea of actually jumping into the field of tech.
So I actually left the medical field because my father had a stroke. And so I moved to a different town to come and take care of him while he recovered. So during his recovery process, he did really well. And it was getting clear that I needed to make plans to go back to work in a regular job one way or another. And my brother is in the tech field, and he had been encouraging me to check out coding and Python specifically for a really long time. And I just blew him off over and over and was like, that's math and science. And like, I'm not going to be able to do that. I don't know how to do anything like that. I don't even know how to really use computers. Don't know much about them. But he kept on pursuing it and kept on pushing me. So I was, have two kids. I have a 15-year-old and a 7-year-old. And the reality just hit me like, do I really want to go back to a job where I cannot actually afford my bills, even though I love my job? Do I want to go back to a job where I know that I will be working every single holiday of every year? Do I want to go back to a job where I can't even afford to buy medical insurance for me or my children? And those are very serious questions. This is people's livelihood. So I really honestly just started looking into it to see if I could maybe understand it, maybe do it, because I knew that it could provide a better quality of life for me and my kids. So I was willing to give it a try.
Start getting the idea now, like, okay, I want to try this at the very least, just to see if I can even make it stick.
Right.
So what path do you go? Like, what do you try?
So I bought some books, like literally Python for kids books, Python for dummies. And I didn't have a laptop. I didn't have any kind of real technology, but in my dad's little extra room, there was literally a 1992 desktop computer. So after the kids went to bed, I would just go out there and, finally got PyCharm and all that kind of stuff installed. And I'd go out there and just start reading through the books and trying to do the little projects. And it was really slow going at first, but the more I did and the more, that instant satisfaction you get from actually creating a project, no matter how small, that really started to encourage me and build up. And I started thinking, maybe I really can do this. And actually, I kind of like doing this. And I was staying up later and later. And I was like, I need to transition this to daytime so I can actually live my life and learn to code at the same time.
So you keep learning on your own, and then you say, we got to take a different path. Right. So what do you do at that point?
So I knew that I wasn't the best self-learner and that I was going to need something else to shake things up, something else to kind of prod me along and be a catalyst. So I just started searching, just keywords in my town. And I realized that they had local meetups. And so I had never been to a meetup or anything before, but I checked it out. It was, a couple days away. So I decided I'm just going to go and show up. So I went to the local, a civic coding group here. And I just kind of hung around in the background, watching what people were doing, seeing what they're saying, eating free food. And I started talking to somebody and they mentioned that there was a local code school here. So I didn't even realize that boot camps existed, that they were really a thing. I just thought you had to go the college route or you had to be self-taught and that was it. So that night when I got home, I looked up the local code school, which is Carolina Code School, where I am, and their curriculum sounded good. I called my brother, said, hey, what does this all mean? What's front end? What's really back end? Like, does this seem like it's legit? And he said it did. So I went ahead and scheduled an appointment with them to see what they're about and just kind of talk to them and see what they offered.
So, I really like that because I'm a huge advocate for meetups. And I always say, meetups genuinely changed my life.
Yeah.
Because I thought the world ended and began at JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't until I went to my first meetup where I was like, oh, there's this whole breadth of knowledge that I've never been exposed to. Like there's Java and C# and all these languages and Python. And I was like, oh, like I didn't know this existed. But it wasn't until you get yourself surrounded by a community where you're feeling all the support and the God's honest truth, I'll work on something that is back end heavy. And I'll create this amazing thing that is an algorithm, does this amazing stuff. And I just like you press a button and you see something, and I'll show it to my wife, and she doesn't relate because she's not in tech.
Right.
So she's like, oh, this doesn't really look too good. I'm like, well, that's not the point of this right now. The point is like the function. And to her, she's like, well, it just doesn't look good. And I get where she's coming from. But when you go to a meetup, everyone there's like, oh, man, I know this had to take a long time to make.
Right.
They relate to these struggles. So let me ask you this before I kind of delve in deeper. Like, how important do you feel community is to making a developer?
I think that community is almost literally everything to making a developer. Obviously, people have the personal responsibility for their drive and if they're really passionate about it and how much work they're going to put in and, their style and all that. But this is such a different space in so many ways than people are used to working in, that you really need people to come aside, come aside you and come raise people up. And it's not just that the culture is different, but it's really based around, like, I call technology the Wild West. Like, there's really no rules. We both know there's thousands of areas you could go in. Really, you can relate any type of previous job you had to tech. So there's not just a clear path. And so being able to meet people and hear their stories of how, they got into it and how they grew, how they made decisions about what area they were going to go into, and really just how they survived the first 6 months, the first year learning and being on the job, because it's a really hard transition. You have to think about things in a very different way than you do just in your normal day-to-day, especially if you have a job where your job is to make a product or to do a specific action. It's a very different mindset. When you come into technology, you have a goal in mind. You need to make it work and you have to have a system, but there's 100 different ways to get there. And most of it is the process, not necessarily the end goal that you're supposed to have by the end of the day or whatnot.
So let's say, I'm a brand new developer and because I've heard this, I'm very interested in finding a meetup or community. What do you suggest as a way for somebody to actually go apart and do that?
I'd say literally just Google in your area for meetups for different groups. There's meetups specific to the language that you're interested in or that you've started learning. There's groups for like Women Who Code, for example. There's colleges that have different groups. Like, just kind of search and see where you think you might want to check it out. And I would really encourage people to not be intimidated or, wonder what's going to happen, because every single meetup I've been to, even if it's something I do not actually work in at all, everybody is welcoming. Everybody is excited to see new people in tech. Everybody wants to help you go down that path. And especially in technology, it's not just a well wishes and hey, good luck. Like, these people will walk beside you. They will help you. You can reach out to them. They'll give you encouragement. They will network with the people they know. It's a true community. So do not cheat yourself if you're a new developer and talk yourself out of going to a meetup. You need to go. You need to get involved in the community.
I can't agree more. I genuinely can't. So you go to this meetup and I'm assuming, liking what you're seeing, and then you find out about this code school. So what happens next? Like, what is your path after that?
So I applied online, and it turns out that I found out about the code school one day too late for that cohort, the current cohort. So, I got the response that it was too late to apply, and they go in 3-month cycles, 3 months or 4 months. So I just kind of kept learning at home. It wasn't going as great as I wanted to. And honestly, I had been this close to giving up hope of just going down that road, because I was just like, what do I do now? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go to and just ask people questions all the time about really simple things. I was feeling embarrassed, even though I shouldn't have. So I kind of just kept on learning on my own. And then a couple months later, I was driving down the road and I just had a thought, like, you need to just apply again, just see what's going on, when their next start date is. So I applied, and I applied for a scholarship. Facebook had come to town for a separate type of event, and they always kind of try to leave the town better. So they had done some scholarships to Carolina Code School. So after I went and had an appointment with the program manager at the code school, really kind of talked about, is this something I could do? And she eased my fears that, like, everybody who comes through here is like you can absolutely do this. I just decided to go full steam ahead. I ended up getting the full scholarship, which was an amazing blessing, and it completely changed my life. I definitely would not be here without it. And just went full steam ahead. Got a MacBook for the first time in my life. I'd never even touched an iPhone or a MacBook before. I showed up to class half an hour early on my first day because I couldn't figure out how to turn the thing on. Like, that's how, just totally naive. But I think I tell that part of the story because it really speaks to, you don't have to have built PCs when you were a teenager in your bedroom. You know what I mean? You don't have to geek out on the inspect element on the internet or whatever, like, you don't have to have that. You just really have to have the drive to want to do something to make your life better. This is an amazing opportunity, and life is really hard, and there's not many paths that you can literally just jump into, and 12 or 16 or 20 weeks later, you have a fresh start at life that is much better than where you started.
I agree for a large portion of that, because for me, I mean, if anyone listening to this probably knows my story, I worked in gas stations for over 10 years frying chicken. I worked construction, I laid asphalt, all that good stuff, but predominantly for 10 years, I was frying chicken in a gas station.
Yeah.
And I had that ceiling upon myself because that was the extent of what I believed, but
Bingo.
Not being tech savvy at all, I was able to jump into this field and make a living at this. And I'm a very big believer, and I genuinely believe everyone can learn to code.
Yes.
Not everyone is going to work at Google, and that is perfectly fine, because you can make a great living at Jimmy's insurance company down the street. Yep. Like, it doesn't all have to be Google or Microsoft or nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, no, there's tons of jobs everywhere, and they're paying you because you are valuable, and you now have this incredible set of skills that you can apply in the field and get paid for.
Yes.
Like, just think about that for a second. You're studying something online theoretically for free, or you can go to a boot camp and pay, and then now turn that into a valuable set of skills, as opposed to going to get a 4-year degree and things like that. And I'll never say don't go to college. There's definitely value in college, and if you can afford that, do it. I'm just saying you can absolutely make that dream job in tech happen without that piece of paper.
Exactly.
So I absolutely agree with the same point that you're making here.
I did want to just expand on one of the things you said, which was like the ceiling in your mind about when you can do it. And since I left the code school and have moved on, I always go back. I'm involved with the students. I follow up with them. I go and talk to them and stuff like that. And over and over and over again, I see it. It happened to me. It happens to them. The transformation is not really how great of a coder you're going to be when you get out, because you're not going to be that great of a coder when you get out. You're going to learn to learn. The transformation is believing that this is true, believing that you have what it takes to do it, believing that you deserve a fair wage, that you deserve, paid time off, that you deserve being able to spend the evenings with your kids. And life is really hard. So a lot of people have really hard experiences. And if you fail in life, a lot of times that's a lifelong consequence. And it's like a get out of jail free card. You really get a new chance. The only key is being relentless and actually convincing yourself that it's a new life. And one of my friends, but when I was first starting this, I changed our little chat name to 100K. And it was a joke because we laughed about it literally every day because it was so unbelievable and just out of reality to think that you can make $100,000. Like, I literally thought that I'd be more likely to win the lottery than to ever make $100,000 in the year. And that's not, I don't need to win the lottery anymore, you know, and this can be anybody who really just wants to walk down the road. And yeah, it's really tough, like code school, boot camp, teaching yourself. That's not easy, but it's only tough for a small amount of time. You know, once you can understand just kind of a framework of how this stuff works, once you can understand, you know, how to formulate your questions, the critical thinking skills you need, you know, the rest of your career in tech, you're going to be learning new things. You're going to be searching. You're going to be fitting different pieces together to get the right solution you need for you. That's not going to change. And that's not the hard part. The hard part is just literally taking the step, doing it, walking through it, and just believing that you are able and you are worthy to do this for yourself, to invest in yourself, and just believing and having faith that it will work out. Like, it's worth, and it's scary. It's really scary, especially when you don't have $20,000 in savings. You know, when I went to code school, we had zero income. Like, I really prayed on it. It was very, very rough. We ate a lot of ramen noodles and potatoes, but I knew that if I could just do that for 12 weeks, that I can make it work coming out of that there would be opportunities, that I would do whatever it took to go and get my first job and just put my all into it. And my whole family has blossomed from that, you know, and that's priceless. It's priceless. And they can do it. Just believe in yourself. It's only a few months. Like, you can do it, guys. Go for it.
You know, what's funny is, so right now I am volunteering at a boot camp and we're teaching people how to code. And so we have people from all different age groups, but, you know, of course, for the predominant part, it's like over 21 to 60. And we're like week 3 here right now. And I was literally talking to someone, and we have a deadline coming up where it's like, if you don't complete this assignment by this deadline, you're dropped from the program. And our boot camp is completely free. We don't charge anybody for that. So all these students are in there for free. And it's like, if you can't meet this deadline, like, you're not going to pass through. And so I was talking to one person, and they're like, man, coding just isn't clicking for me. Like, it's just not happening. And we jumped on a call and we were addressing some problems. And 8 hours later, they finished the assignment.
Yeah.
And I said, it isn't clicking? Are you sure? Because it seems like it clicked. The problem is sometimes we're always so focused on where we're going, we never actually look at what we've accomplished thus far. Yeah. So it kind of feels like we're in the same spot, even though we've progressed. And I try to tell people, like, keep that in mind, especially because in a boot camp, 12 weeks, for example, is fast. Yeah. Like, that is incredibly fast. And I always tell people, you know, I kind of hate when, like, I see boot camps say 90 days you're a full stack developer. It's like, no, you're not. In 90 days you learn how to learn. Right. And then you can start adding upon that. Maybe you'll get a job where they're willing to teach you or something like that. But there's no way you're walking out of there knowing everything. Like, I've been in this field for years, and I can tell you right now, I'm still scratching the surface on JavaScript. Like, it just never stops. So, with that being said, and with you going through that, at what point in your journey, especially after the boot camp, did you feel like, okay, I feel comfortable now, as opposed to maybe I feel like my head is just slightly above water?
So that is a question that's still near and dear to my heart, because it really wasn't that long ago. I've been at my full-time job for 1 year and 3 months, and I've had a lot of opportunities that I think other developers don't necessarily get in their first year. I was able to kind of architect a big service on Amazon and just use architect skills and design and use a lot of things I hadn't used before. So that really got to push me out of my comfort zone. So at that point is when I transitioned from doing projects that had a couple files, you know, just a small piece of the puzzle, to really kind of having a project that I owned. And so that was the key part to me. And I guess they call that kicking you out of the nest, or you know, whatever phrase they want to put on that. But, you know, where I worked, they knew what they were doing. They didn't let me drown, but they gave me space to figure it out. They gave me encouragement when I needed it. And when I finished up that project, I I will never forget it. It was very early in the morning when I finally got all my 200s coming through and successes. And at that very moment is when I accepted in myself, I am a developer. I'm no longer a student. I'm no longer somebody hiding, pretending to be a developer, hoping that I'll become that. I was a developer at that moment. So I think it's the moment that you have pushed through enough and, gotten your goal, whatever goal that is to you. And it's going to be different for everybody, but that was the moment for me. And it's one of my sweetest moments in life, to be honest with you.
You know what's funny is I don't know why I just thought of this, but you said it so perfectly. I was out with family and we were doing like, what is your like lucky number, favorite number?
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone was like 7, lucky number 7, all that good stuff. And they asked me, I was like 200. And they're like, what does that even mean? I was like, and I tried to explain it and I'm like, you know what? It's a programming thing. It's not going to make sense right now, but just know if 200 is on my mind and like I see a 200, I'm in a great mood. All right. So you go through this whole situation to where you're, after the boot camp, you land an internship and you're going through that. Like, how did you feel walking into that internship in the beginning? What were some of the things that were on your mind? And really, like, what were you looking out for to make sure you were accomplishing and doing?
So I had got offered a couple different internships. So I kind of had a head start on what am I actually trying to do here? Because I had to choose. This internship leads to this path. This could teach me this. What am I interested in? So the internship that I chose focused on Python, which is my first love as a language. And I really was interested in the fact that it was a remote company, but they were doing a local spot for us, I guess. So the interns met locally. We had constant contact. They came down sometimes, but it really offered a hybrid experience. And since one of my goals was to work remote eventually, I wanted some real experience about what is this really like. I wanted to figure out how to work in a development team in a corporate setting. I had always worked in the hospital. It's not corporate-y. It's not necessarily teamwork. You just go out and do your job. So I realized that I had some shortcomings in figuring out how to communicate well in a team. I felt like I didn't know how to word a single question. And, I kind of didn't because I had to repeat them 4 or 5 times most of the time. But that's one of the things I learned. But basically, I just wanted to go deeper into Python. I wanted to get better professional skills. I wanted to learn how to be a good teammate. And with our internship, it wasn't like a competition where like at the end, we're going to pick one of you guys. And I'm very, very thankful that it wasn't, because it let us kind of just relax and enjoy the process of learning rather than trying to like put fancy code tricks in there and impress somebody, which we wouldn't have done anyways at that point. And it really kind of made the atmosphere where we got to help each other. So we all had totally different types of projects in totally different realms. And we all had kind of a different background coming in. One was self-taught. I was from a boot camp, and one actually has a college degree, but in something else. So it was very varied, but we got to kind of help each other with the thought process. And that's really what you need on the job anyways. So, and I definitely feel that I got everything that I intended to get out of that internship. It helped me grow tremendously. And I know that I wouldn't be where I am now if I had not been able to go to that internship.
You kind of raise a good point. And I think a lot of people, when they get that first job, they have that like insecurity of, are they going to keep me? Are they letting me go? Are they going to see right through me? And you were able to go into that situation and feel like, okay, I can relax, even though they're saying, well, we're not going to choose somebody. But I think deep down, any job is still keeping that metric to some degree. Like if they're not performing, we're not keeping them.
Yeah.
And you were able to still meet those standards. So were you like staying up late at night studying? Were you like losing sleep over this? Like what was it really breaking down to on a daily basis for you?
It was stressful because, you always have in the back of your mind that this is only a limited amount of time. So I've done code school, we're in the internship. There's no guarantee that I'm going to have a job right away out of an internship. So really, it was stressful because I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to be able to provide a good product. I wanted to do it in a timely manner. But the reality is that still very new, still learning. And, I was thrown in, or not thrown. I mean, I asked for it. I was very happy to be there, but I went into areas I was not familiar with, which I'm grateful for now, because that taught me how to stretch, how to learn a little bit more, how to lean on other people, how to kind of get used to different language, and just being uncomfortable in the job setting like that. Because what it comes down to is you always feel self-doubt. Like, it's going to be 4 months and I'm not even gotten half this thing done. But it didn't work out that way. We all finished our projects. We all learned a ton. It was definitely less stressful than code school. I will tell you that. So I enjoyed it. And it really was the perfect segue between school and your first career job there. And I would really recommend anybody to going the internship route. And I'm going to be very honest. Like, when I first started code school, I talked to other people and they had internships, but I was 33 years old and I'm thinking, you ain't going to an internship? Like, that's for 18-year-olds. That's for people who are in the first year of college. I'm going to look dumb and out of place. But that's not at all the case. I really, really had the wrong idea. And my whole team at my internship throughout the whole company really just helped develop me to be able to be a good employee for my employee now, to be able to have some more confidence going there, and to be able to say, you know what, I just don't like that area, or I find that I am really better in this area over here, or, hey, I need to learn this area that maybe I'm not great at, but I don't understand how this type of documentation is written, like networking, concurrency, whatever. Like, that's not my forte, but it's something I need to know. So it was able to teach me how to kind of swing my communication style to meet their communication style, and just be really upfront and frank. Like, I don't know any word that you just said in that sentence. Can you please meet me where I am and break it down a little more, and let that pride go out the door? Because when you leave the internship, yes, they care. Like, they're glad to have you. They care about your future, but they're not in your life, So you have to just really put the pride down and just look at it as you're there to learn and receive everything you can possibly receive, and do a good job for the company, whatever they're asking you to do.
You've touched on several things that are big points for me, and I'm a very big believer in, you could literally be the best developer in the world, but if you are a terrible teammate, then most companies will skip over you.
Yeah.
If you don't learn how to communicate your problems, you are not a valuable member on the team, in my opinion. I don't care what you can produce, because there's no way one person is carrying the entire architecture of a company. It's broken down the way it's broken down because we need multiple people. So if you're not communicating, or if you're trying to speak on such a high level that it alienates a section of people, you're not doing justice to what this company needs, no matter where you work. I don't care where it is. So I love the fact that you were able to say, you know what, I don't understand what that is, because I know a lot of beginners would almost feel intimidated to say, oh, I don't know that.
Right.
And I talk about this so much, like, you should be comfortable saying, I don't know, because if you walk away thinking you know and you don't, you're going to toil away more time trying to at least understand what is required at this point. Right. So I do love that point. And that soft skills to me is, I'd say, more than coding almost, because even if you're a mediocre developer, but you're great at being on a team, you're great at communicating, you can get a lot of that stuff done and get to where you need to be if you're mediocre. You don't need to be world class to be on a team like that.
I totally agree. Whenever I talk to anybody about entering this field, team, check out your team, find the right team for you, make sure that good people are on your team, and make sure that you are a good teammate. Like, that's at the top of my list there. And, it's actually one of the things I got from the internship, because I realized these are the type of people that I work well with, So then when I went to start interviewing with companies, I wanted to make sure that I was on a good team. I literally would not have accepted a job on a team of people that I didn't click with, or I didn't think were going to be for me. And so in the interview process, like, ask tough questions. Like, if you are a brand new developer, everybody else on the team has a computer science degree, ask them, how do you feel about working with somebody who's brand new? What is in your mind, what kind of time is appropriate to spend? Or what's your style of mentorship? Just get a feel for how they how they function, because if you get, especially your first dev job or any tech, if you have a bad experience and you feel imposter syndrome is bad no matter what, just because this is a crazy, it's a crazy field, there's just so much. But if you have imposter syndrome plus you don't like the people you work with, or plus you feel like you're a burden or you're annoying them, then you're probably going to leave tech. And, I'll say that's even more for women than men because of the communication style difference and how we process emotions, and because in tech, a lot of men are not used to working with women as peers, as other developers. So yeah, you really need to be a good teammate, and you need to find the right team for you because your success depends on it.
So obviously we've touched on a couple of things. One being I'm a huge supporter of trying to get more women in tech, and a lot of the resources that I give out are definitely to women and lower income areas, but it's because they thrive once they finally join the field.
Yeah.
Like it just makes great business sense to have more women in this field because they do so well. Yeah. But one thing I'll say, a job is a job is a job. Right? You can work anywhere and you'll get a paycheck for it. But I love my job. I don't foresee myself leaving anytime soon. And it's not because the company is this world-class company or something, but I work with some phenomenal human beings that I genuinely enjoy being around.
Yeah.
And I've told this to my boss several times, I love working here, but it's because of my boss, my coworkers, our team dynamic is fantastic. We get stuff done. So there's many times where we're dealing with some major headaches that we shouldn't be dealing with because of maybe business decisions or whatever it may be. But when I look at it at the end of the day, man, sometimes I'm fed up with this company. God, I'm so fed up with it. But when I look back at the people I'm working with, I'm like, they're so fantastic. Where else would I find the kind of people that I'm working with? We joke together. We have a great time. We're genuinely friends at this point. Right. So it's it adds to the satisfaction of that position.
Definitely.
And you can't choose your coworkers. So when you find them, it's great to actually find a place that meshes well, that supports each other, as opposed to I turned down several jobs in tech before I found my company that I'm with now. And I can honestly tell you, I saw when I talked to the team, the dynamic was at a couple places toxic. And I was like, God, I don't want to go into that. Yeah. And then be miserable. What's the point of being broke and miserable to then having money and then being miserable? I'm just trading headaches at that point. It's not like I'm getting rid of one. So I would rather not be miserable.
Exactly. And there's plenty of jobs out there. They say there's 5 jobs per developer. Now, granted, all of them are not for brand new people. So I understand you can't just have the top pick of 100 companies, but do not sell yourself short. You can find people that believe in you and will help you grow and want to help you grow. And I would just add in that, I love my team. They're sick of me telling me how much I love them and singing their praises because we have different personality types. There's work, love languages. It does not include physical touch, but I give them praise. So they know. But if you do find yourself on a team that maybe is not working really great, you can still make a difference even as a new developer. Leadership does not come with a pay grade. It does not come with a year's experience on there. You can go right in and start changing the culture. You can kind of change communication styles. You can get in there and throw some happy face emojis in the chat to make everybody kind of laugh and joke in the morning or whatever instead of being grumpy. And you can be assertive and ask, even as a brand new developer, do not just hide away in your corner and think this isn't working. I don't know how to do this. You can ask what you need. People learn in all different ways. So if you need some time to watch videos, ask for it. If you need a certain book, ask for it. I love being and networking with people and being involved. So very early on, I realized I need to, at least once a month, it would really help me work better if I could go to a conference. It doesn't have to be across the country. I just need to get out with other people who do this, talk to other people, get fresh perspectives, learn something new, and kind of meet that people need. And it makes sense because I was coming from a career where I was constantly around people to something where I was very secluded, at least in the physical sense, so voice it. And then once I told him that, it was even just threw me up on the mountaintop as far as my work environment, because they got a better Christina towards the end of the month. You know what I mean? When it was time for me to go, I was feeling like they valued me, that they poured into me, that they heard me. And it just made everything better. It made me want to be a better resource for the company I work for. So do yourself a favor, learn how you learn the best, and ask for what you need, because a burnt out developer is a bad developer, and it's costing the company a lot of money.
You know, you're so true. That's so accurate, because I've always said I would rather you pull back than have to recover.
Yeah.
Because if you pull back, maybe you just need a couple of days, but recovery, it could take a couple of days, it could take a couple of weeks. Like I've seen people burn out and it takes almost a month just for them to come back mentally. Like it's not worth it. You know what I mean? That little bit of rest will go a long, long way. So
I want to ask you a question. Have you burned out before?
Oh yeah. You know what's funny is I've always been a go kind of person. I'm very driven in that nature. And even before tech, you know, I was working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks.
Yeah.
And I very quickly realized that the physical movement is nothing comparative to the mental movement.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what your body wants to do. Your mind is as stubborn as they come, and they're like, "No, I'm just not doing this anymore."
Yeah.
Like I'll sit there and be like, "I'm going to study this," and my mind's like, "No, it's not happening. It's done. It's done." And so, if you try to keep pushing past that, you'll get nowhere. So I very quickly realized that if I feel myself getting to that point, absolutely take some rest. But I will say that I'm a very big believer in you should work harder on yourself than you do your job. Because a job can tell you what they'll pay you, but they can't tell you what you're worth. Only you can.
Yep.
So for me, the way that it helps me to some degree fight burnout, I have several hours every day that is just me time. And I'm a very big believer in that humans need to prioritize themselves.
Right.
Because especially as a parent, as a mother, as a father, we have this tendency to put our children and our spouse before us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a week will go by to where we're like, you know, we didn't even spend 30 minutes with ourselves. I didn't spend a little bit of time just saying, what's making Danny tick right now? And I've realized that if I prioritize myself, if I say for these 3 hours every day or these 2 hours, whatever it may be, I'm going to do something that's important to me. And I have my goals written on a wall over here. And I look at my goals and then I'm working towards them in one way or another. So my goals aren't always like studying something. It's actually accomplishing something, getting to another point. Like for me, my end all be all wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a developer. For me, my purpose is I feel it's a little bit bigger than that. So I've created this platform. I try to help people reach these levels. I give out courses all over the world and I speak all over the world. But more so, I just want to help people.
Right.
That's literally all I do this for. And I help people land their first jobs in tech, and I help people like figure out how to market themselves, whatever it may be. So sometimes during those hours, it's me learning more on how to be effective in that area.
Right.
But I will never use me time for work time.
Right.
Me time is me time, and I'll never associate the two, because what happens is your 8-hour day becomes 12, your 12 becomes 14, and then next thing you know is like I wake up to code, I go to sleep just so I can wake up again to code.
And you've been dreaming of code in the nighttime too. So.
I still do that. There's no way around it. I feel like that still happens. But I will say that, at least in my respect, that you have to prioritize yourself. That is the number one. And here's another thing. Like we always get into this like perpetual cycle of, it almost becomes like self-hate, where we get into this, what I call the treadmill of work, and we're doing the same thing over and over and over. And it goes from like, oh, I really like that I was doing this, to I'm kind of mad on it. And that's like, oh God, I'm still doing this stuff. But really it kind of derives from, we allow ourselves to start hating ourselves to a degree because we haven't given ourselves self-love. And I genuinely believe self-love is the only cure for self-hate. And the only way you can find self-love is by prioritizing yourself and really just taking some time with yourself to ask yourself the questions that you don't want to answer.
Yep.
And that's going to be the only way you actually find out what you need to continue.
I agree. And especially in a field that is so mentally taxing, you know, like your whole job is really just to think critically and come up with a solution. And that is really wearing. And I'm really glad you brought this up. Literally, it's something I'm just learning over the past couple years. When you're a parent, like I need to see how you get a couple hours to yourself a day. We need to compare notes so I can make that happen. But, as a parent, you put that stuff first. But the bottom line is, like that old saying, you can't pour out of an empty cup. And it doesn't have to be what people normally associate self-care, like as a woman, like, go get a massage, get a pedicure. No, I've realized that my self-care, especially since I can work at home now, is literally going and laying in my yard during my lunch break in the sun, as long as it's, not super cold or whatever. I've realized that my self-care is learning my style of coding. I like to code for like 45 minutes, then take a 5-minute break and literally go walk somewhere, like physically move my body and not be looking at a computer screen. My one of my favorite coworkers, Daniel, he apparently really loves coding like 2.5 hours straight and then going and taking a 10 or 15-minute break. And that's fine. That's good, because that's how each of us works best. But you have to discover that, and you have to honor yourself enough to say, I've realized this is what I need, and that's what I'm going to do, because otherwise it's going to all crash and burn. And everything, like the whole family, it's all going to go down, if I do not figure out what works for me so that I can give to other people also.
Yeah. I mean, for me, my most effective timing, I do like a 25-5, so 25 on, 5 off, or 50 and 10. But I feel that 25 minutes, I'm just producing nothing but great results. Yeah. And after that, I kind of nosedive. Yeah. But for me to get the time, I wake up every day at 4:00 in the morning. And I wake up at 4:00 because my family wakes up at 7. So that gives me about 3 hours where the entire house is asleep. No one makes a sound. I'm awake before the sun wakes up, right? In theory. But like nothing around me. Like you could walk in the street and there's no sounds. There's nothing. So for me, I feel like that's literally me making peace with my world around me. And I genuinely believe, like, sometimes the best thing you can do is make yourself bored, because your mind will wander and find out what you really want. And I try to do that within that time period of, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just isolate myself for a little bit of time and just figure out what I need. And maybe I'm not asking myself, or I'm pushing it to the side, and it ends up being the best. Anyway, we've gone into a tangent right here. I got to get back to the main purpose. And so I always ask this question to all my guests. And if you could go back in time to the very first day before you typed in that first, console.log statement or whatever it may be, would you do it all over again? Like, if you had to do it all over again, would it be worth it?
Absolutely. I would do it 25 times if I needed to do it. It has totally changed my life, not just the physical money and whatever, all that stuff. That's nice. And I used to think that was super, super great. And now I realize that just makes life a little bit easier. But I enjoy what I do every day. And me and you kind of have the same notes as far as taking where we've gotten and kind of going, circling back and saying, hey, this is an option. Like, come and check this out. It may not be for you, but it may be for you. This is a pathway you can get there. Because we see the reality that a lot of the world is it's just not fair, and it's not easy, and it's really almost impossible to raise a family, even on 2 parents working, making $10, $12 an hour. And it breaks down families, it breaks down marriages, it breaks down communities. People can't go to church because they have to work every Sunday. They're too tired to eat dinner together. They don't have any friends because they're super mad at the world because everything's so stressful. This is really, I would do it a million times. Definitely the best decision ever. And not just, for the job. Like, it gives you an opportunity, personally, I feel, to really grow into who you are, because you get so much freedoms. You get creative freedom. You get to kind of like exhale and see a different side of life that's just not nose to the grindstone. And it gives you, I guess it's like the hierarchy of needs or whatever. Once those basic ones get met a little bit better and a little bit easier, you can develop yourself. You can have the time, like you said, to discover who you are. You can be a better parent, a better spouse, a better community member. You can become a leader, in whatever areas that you're passionate about, tech or not. And it just opens doors to like live your best life. I know that's cliche, but that's the reality of it. You can, even if you don't want to do extra projects on the side, you'll have the availability and the time and, you know, the resources to do what you are passionate about. So yes, I would do it in an instant. I would try to make my own time machine to go back and do it when I was 20 years old instead. But I would not change it for anything. Totally worth it.
And the last question I always ask is, what was your mama, I made it moment? What was that moment where you were like, mama, I made it, that everything's come together, everything feels right? Because a lot of times we're on our journey and it doesn't feel right till we get to a certain point. What was your mama, I made it moment?
So I'm going to say that moment was actually early on, because I had just had this, you know, this certain number in my head or whatever. And that was the number that I figured, you know, we could go on a vacation if I made this much money. We could, you know, not worry about it. We could buy a house. I could, you know, buy a car, whatever. And it was still kind of out of my reach mentally, kind of what we were talking about, like really believing it. But I fought for it. I worked for it, and I negotiated for it. And when that came to reality and I officially accepted, even though it seems shallow because it's about money, but that was my, you know, I mean, that was taking care of my family then. But when I knew that that was solid and that I had my path, you know, I would always be able to be a developer now. You know, I'd work hard enough that they would keep me and like me and I'd be encouraging, and, you know, I wouldn't ever have to go backwards. And so really that first accepting that job offer was, you've gone forward, you've kept going forward, and now you're at the point in the game where, you know, you're not going to slide back down that ladder again. You'll be able to make it now, and you'll be able to give your kids the life you wanted and that they deserve now. So that was it for me.
Christina Roberts, software developer, evangelist for Women Who Code. Thank you. I enjoyed every single moment of this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.